and welcome to my very first YouTube video. I am so happy to be here. I am a wedding photographer. I have been doing this for 5 years now, and in the last 5 years, I have learned so much information, and I am just eager to share it with newer photographers who are learning to get into the wedding industry. So welcome to my first channel. My first video for my first channel. I want to focus on wedding images because there is nothing more fun for me than photographing a wedding and then coming home and seeing what I can do with the images for these beautiful couples. So if you look at my screen, you will see this image here in Lightroom. On the left is the before and on the right is the after. You can see there's quite a large difference in this wedding image. So I want to show you how I did this. It's very simple. This is a very basic edit. As you can see, it's a very basic pose as well. Tell you is there is no right or wrong way to edit an image. Okay, so if you're watching this and you think this is the only way to edit an image, you're absolutely wrong. The way that I do it might not be the way that you like to do it, but I'm going to show you how I would edit this image. So first, what I would like to do is bring up the exposure. I think right there is it gives us a good jumping off point to start with because we don't want to overexpose it, but we don't want it underexposed like it was. Next, I like to really warm up my images. Some photographers like to be a little bit more warm with their pictures. I like to be a little bit more warm. Some like to be a little bit colder. So it really just kind of depends on you. I like to do my newlywed shoots as close to golden hour sunset as possible. So I like to respect that natural lighting, which is very golden, and try to just enhance that in the image because that's what the client remembered when we did the photos. So next thing, I really like how there's so much green in here. So with your tint right here, don't want to go crazy, right? Just a little bit is all we need, like -3. I mean, it just warms up that green a little bit without making the couple look green. Okay, next, I'm going to go ahead and add some contrast into here. Say about 15. It doesn't do a whole lot. It just kind of adds like a little tiny bit of contrast. You don't need to go crazy with it. I mean, if you add more, it just gets, like real dark in here. And we don't necessarily like that. At least I don't. So I think probably about right there is good. Okay, so next I want to go ahead and tackle the dress. As you can see, it's just a little bit too highlighted. The whites are a little bit harsh here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the brush tool. And I'm going to go ahead and paint on the dress. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and bring the highlights down a little bit, like maybe about there. So then that way that dress doesn't look so overexposed. All right, so we're done with that. Next, I'm going to go ahead and play with the clarity. As we can see, it is a pretty sharp image already, so we don't need to add too much, but just a little bit. So that way, if they decide to print the image, it just has that little bit of extra crisp to the image. That's why I do that. And now texture, I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. It's just going to add like an overall softness to the image. A lot of these adjustments aren't going to make a drastic change when you do the adjustment, like texture and clarity. If you do it a little bit, it's not going to make a huge difference. But when you do different things to the image, it kind of creates an overall change. Sorry if you hear my cat in the background meowing. All right, next I'm gonna go ahead. So I like to work with the dehaze option. Now this is a very clear day. There's not a whole lot of hazing that we have to worry about. So I'm just gonna do a little bit, like about right there. Again, it's not like a big change. It's just like many little subtle changes that kind of helps. So, all right. Now we're going to go down. The next thing I want to touch on with this image and show you, and this happens with a lot of wedding images, is you see how there's like some blue here in his shoes and in her dress. Um, you know, the average client probably wouldn't really notice that, but I don't really like that. I like the whites to be white. I don't like the bluish color that organically shows up in camera on white dresses and white shoes. So this saturation tool right here with the blues, I'm just going to bring this down quite a bit. Now you see that drastic change, and look at her dress and shoes right here. This is one trick that I love to just kind of make those dresses really pop and make them like crispy white. Okay, so next, since we're in this saturation tool here, we have so much beautiful green. We really don't need to do a lot with it, but just a little tiny bit. We just kind of bump that green up. Look at that subtle difference, off and then on. It's very subtle, but again, a bunch of subtle changes make a big overall difference in your image. Okay, so what I like to do next with skin tone, their skin is beautiful. There's like some red, but it's a far away image, so it's not really the end of the world. But what I like to do is actually bring up the orange. So I'm going to show you something. If we go really bright, you see how their skin goes super, super white, and so does the building. If you bring it down, they get really tan. Kind of funny, right? So what I like to do with my fair-skinned couples is just bring this orange up a smidge, like not much, just a little bit, just enough to bring up their skin tone and kind of brighten it up a little bit. And if there's a lot of red in skin tone, you can do the same thing right here. See if I bring it down, he looks more red. Bring it up, he's a little bit less red. So bring that up just a smidge as well. Okay, so I am really happy with this image. The only thing that I would do is maybe sorry, we're going to do the clone tool right here. Get rid of these leaves just like a little bit. You know, it's like subtle details that make an overall image, especially for weddings. And a lot of this foliage is natural, so you don't want to like go crazy and get rid of everything, because it is somewhat natural to have leaves on the ground, especially when you're underneath trees, but just kind of like the big pieces you can clean up. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do to make this image pop, I am going to take my brush tool and I'm going to paint on this corner, because this is where the light is kind of shining in. So I like to really kind of enhance that a little bit. So I selected this area. This is where like the sun would be peeking out. I'm going to warm this up. You see that gradual change as we just kind of warm up spots. It just kind of makes the sun look a little more, I'm not sure what the word is, like it's peeking through the trees a little bit. It enhances the natural lighting in that situation. And then I'm going to bring up the exposure even just a little tiny bit, like about there. All right. So you can see just like a small adjustment made a big impact on the overall image. And that's it. So this is the final image that I delivered to my client. Let me know what you think. Feel free to comment below. Let me know what you want to see. I'm definitely going to keep posting these. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.